We'll just do it like this. It's okay. And we're underway. Hello. It is a green screen. This is not my actual setup. It's better than my other background, though. It was too invasive. Is it okay if I sim for you? We're going to talk about that. I think I'm just going to get right into it here. I want to explain this word, what is a simp? A simp is going to mean someone who's very nice. We're going to talk about how not to be too nice, and there is such thing as being too nice. People find that very unattractive, also very ungenuine. A person theoretically being themselves is the most sort of attractive quality in a partner. So you want someone who's definitely genuine, but you also don't want to be so genuine to the point where you don't care about what anyone besides yourself thinks. So you really want to find the balance. What is a simp? You can look it up in Urban Dictionary, but it basically means it's this meme term, very popular on the troll internet and Reddit, that basically means a guy who will do anything for a particular girl. And particularly if that girl is not necessarily the best catch in the world, the person's basically desperate. That's what a simp is. If you have a person who is, obviously this thing can be very overused. You can have a person who's just being a nice person, being a considerate person. People say, people insecure that they're themselves not that nice will say, oh, a guy's being a simp. Anytime someone donates to like a female streamer, everyone's like, oh, he's a simp. So that's not really what a simp is. A simp is actually, again, someone who is too giving. A douchebag is the opposite, is someone who is too self-centered. Generation Z crap now? Exactly. Probably you're a simp, exactly. So how is being a simp bad? So let's talk, I'm going to talk in a very particular set of circumstances. It is possible to be a simp, meaning be a completely nice, giving, caring, you'll do anything for your partner, and actually they have a very good relationship like that. Typically, if you are with someone in that relationship, whether you're pursuing it or you're in the relationship right now, and that person has a very dominant personality, it could be that being a simp would work. Sometimes being very submissive, meaning being very, if that is who you are deep down, you're a submissive person. You want the way that you adapt. What does it really mean to be submissive in personality? Now, I'm not talking about kinky stuff where you like getting tied up and beaten. Okay, I'm talking about actually in a relationship dynamic. If you naturally feel the way you adapt in your relationships is to be submissive, is to look up to your partner, is to go along, be a follower, to go along with what they say, and that's what you actually feel deep down, being a simp is actually perfect, because there still has to be a balance, because you're going to probably be attracted to people with more dominant personalities, people who want to be more of a leader, would like someone to follow them, sort of want to be that dominant role in the relationship, and being very nice and very giving, very caring, that can actually be a very attractive quality, again, to the right people. I would say even in that situation, being too much of a simp, where you completely lose yourself and you're not being yourself at all, you're just totally just trying to mold your personality and yourself and the way you act and the way you talk completely to the other person wants, I would say even dominant people would find that if it's to such an extreme extent to be unattractive, because you want to be, no matter who you are, if you're in a relationship, you want to be with the person themselves. Their personality is attractive. You want to feel like even someone who's submissive has like a certain charm of just who they are. And if a person, again, is way too molding themselves, that charm is going to be missing. So first of all, even a submissive person needs to limit how simpy they're going to be because it can be to the point where they're not going to be attractive. But let's talk about a particular scenario. I'm going to talk about an average male, who usually simp is a term that is applied to guys who would like to not be submissive. They would like to be respected. They would like to take at least somewhat the dominant sort of be the leader in the relationship, to have the dominant role, or at least to be eye to eye, at least to be equals. If a person is way too simpy, where they'll just do anything for the other person, it's a very, very unattractive quality. Because if you're looking, so first of all, there's the overall unattractiveness of the person just not being genuine, not being yourself. Someone who's not genuine is just, the person them is missing. So there's that. But there's also another thing, that if you just want to say, again, a typical girl, there's obviously so many exceptions, and we'll talk about the more exceptions as we goes by. But let's say you just have a typical female who wants a guy who's taller than them and stronger than them, and wants that just to be able to sort of lean on them and to be taken care of. There is this little thing, again, obviously there's a lot of exceptions. A lot of girls do not want a guy like that. But let's just say an average, just sort of average, typical, we'll go with the word typical instead of average, sort of just would want a guy that they can sort of look up to and respect. If he's being too, so you want someone who's nice, but you don't want someone who's a simp. What's the difference? Someone who's nice means they're going to be themselves. They're going to be self-confident. They're going to have a little bit of an attitude of, I'm going to be me, and you take it or leave it. That's actually a very attractive attitude, as long as it's not done too much, because you're getting that real person. You're feeling their strength. Self-confidence is very, very sexy. It's very attractive. If a person cares about what other people think so much and they're trying to mold themselves, they're missing the self-confidence. And there's also another trap, and I feel like this is probably the most dangerous trap. A lot of guys, I'm just reading the Twitch chat who's kind of pointing this out here. A lot of guys, what they'll do is they'll care so much, they'll value the relationship so much to the point where they would do anything to please the other person, but they'll, in order not to be a simp, they'll pretend that they don't care. They'll sort of portray this false self-confidence, and that is actually probably the prototype of being a simp, is where you actually care so much about every little thing the person thinks about you, but you pretend not to. And every single time they go and say, "Well, you're being a simp," saying, "Well, no, I'm not being a simp. I don't really care. I totally, I'm just being myself." If you actually care and you're pretending not to, people can see right through that. Especially girls who have very good intuitions can see right through that crap. You're not going to be able to get away with it. The only way to actually get out of being a simp is to have self-value to the point where you care more about being yourself than you care about the relationship. Because if you care more about the relationship with a particular person more than being yourself, you're going to just do anything for them, and you're going to lose yourself in the process of the relationship, which it will actually backfire, because the whole thing you're trying to do is adjust it. Everything that person wants, you're going to do for them, and you're going to, if you talk a certain way and it'll annoys the person, you're going to adjust that, you're adjusting everything. You're trying to please them so hard that is going to actually end up being the biggest turnoff, because what they're looking for is for you to actually be yourself and to be self-confident. La, la, la. Feel free to make it to a new account and come back to Twitch. Okay, so let's talk about the other way. Now, I'm just going to go through the subject a little bit more, then I'm going to spend a lot of time talking to the chat about the specifics, and we'll have like the just chatting portion of the stream. I just want to kind of get it all out there. So I'm going to stay in relationships. We're going to bring this to other things too, besides for relationships. How to get along with the community, how a person online, like what your persona should be. Should you try to be more pleasing or try to be more yourself? We're going to talk about the pros and cons of the different part of it. But let's talk about someone going the other way. Let's talk about the douchebag. A douchebag is also unbalanced, but he's exactly the opposite. He values being himself so much where he's not willing to compromise on any little thing for the sake of the relationship. So it can be coming from one of two places. One is that he completely undervalues relationships. Relationships don't matter to him at all. His connection with any particular person, he's like, he doesn't value anyone else. They could be coming from that. Or he overvalues, stubbornly, his little innuendos and his just being himself. Now, you can have a person who can get away with that and still be charismatic. There are even people, I would say Donald Trump is an example of someone who can be super, super self-confident and still gets away with it because they're a charismatic person. That sort of self-confidence gives the charisma off to other people. But forget about controversial figures. You'll think about just a lot of people, let's say freaking Hollywood celebrities, that they're just like, they have this thing where they're just completely full of themselves. Even like the Rock, Dwayne Johnson. Now, I think in real life he's actually a pretty nice person, but one of his stage personas, is him being the complete and total 100% douchebag, not caring about what anyone thinks besides himself. And that's actually a very charismatic role that he plays. There's something about the guy who just doesn't care at all about what anyone thinks about him, and they're just going to be the most genuine version of themselves, coupled with charisma. That's really important. That actually ends up being a very attractive, sort of like star-like quality. Now, if you have a person who does not have charisma, and charisma here is going to just mean that sort of like the sensitivity to sort of like, it's very, like, it's not a very easy thing to define what exactly is charisma, but it's basically coming off as pleasant and as confident and not obnoxious, not cringy, more just like being very admirable, just sort of in your mannerisms and the way you talk. So someone who has the charisma can get away with being a douchebag. Obviously, someone with very little charisma who's just annoying and obnoxious, and they just end up being one of these people, I don't care what anyone thinks about me, and they don't have the charisma to couple with that. No one's going to find that attractive at all. That's only when it comes to sort of being a star, or being a YouTuber, or being a celebrity, or even being president. But when it comes to actually being in a relationship, even the people that find that sort of personality attractive, and even they would maybe agree to go on a date with that person, in the course of a long-term relationship, no one's gonna like the guy who is like that. I mean, if you even imagine all the people who think, let's say Donald Trump is very charismatic, how many of you would like to date him, would actually like to be in a long-term relationship with someone with that level of, we can call it douchebaggery, so just so self-confidence to the point where you just don't care about what anyone thinks about you. You're not going to adjust yourself and the way you talk and the way you act at all to cater to other people's things. I don't think it's overconfidence. I really don't think that's what it's about. It's because if you are just being yourself, I don't think it's overconfidence, it's just confidence. It's not being flexible. It's inflexibility. So again, if you're too flexible, you're a simp. It means you'll do anything with the other person. If you won't do anything for the other person, you're a douchebag. There is this fine area between, and some people are more, some people are less, and I feel like it's just a matter of balance where you're still self-confident enough to be yourself and to be attractive, but you're not but you're still flexible and you're still willing to make adjustments and make changes to suit the other person, that you're still nice and considerate. Since, again, in a long-term relationship, if you're not going to be able to be flexible and not able to somewhat change the way you act and the way you talk to suit the other person, you're just going to end up with so much friction building over time that the relationship is not going to last. It's going to be very, very unpleasant. One or two more things I wanted to say about relationships here. What was it? It's just been in the back of my mind, and I'm waiting until the end of that explanation. What the heck was I about to talk about? I'll edit this part out of the YouTube video. Okay, here's the other thing I wanted to say, is that if you have a need that a lot of people have, I think it's a very genuine emotional need people have from relationships, is to feel accepted, just to feel appreciated. The other person loves you. It's really to feel love. And part of feeling love is the person accepting you for who you are deep down, for your sort of root base personality. If you are presenting yourself too much in a way where you're trying to be too politically correct and you're trying to be too much of a simp, to be too adjusting yourself in order to meet the other person's needs, you're never going to find someone who will accept you for who you are. They're just accepting this charade and this act that you're putting on, and you're really not going to feel loved deep down. It's another psychological reason why the best way to approach dating is to just be yourself and to let whoever that is, and even if there's only 10% of people, or even 1% of people, or even 0.1% of people who will love you for who you are, just find that person, because you're not going to actually feel real deep love from anyone else. I think this is really a mistake that a lot of people do when they get into relationships, is that why people fall out of relationships and they don't really last long term is because they're sort of presenting themselves in a certain way in order to attract a partner, but as time goes by, they say, well, I don't really actually feel appreciated. So they naturally let their guard down and start being more and more themselves and letting the person in more and more to who they really are. And then the person's like, hey, that's not what I signed up for. How many people do you know that when they start dating someone, their partner seems one way, but after a little while, they're like, who the heck is this? They end up seeming like something else. The best way is to actually present yourself genuinely for who you are. And you feel like that's going to appeal to less people? Great. It's way better than attracting someone who's not going to actually love you for who you are and finding out the hard way many months later. Better to just put that filter up from the beginning and just say, this is me. If you like it, great. And if not, not. Now, the reason why people have a hard time with this is because they're lonely. I think this is actually probably one of the biggest things that turns people into simps. Because again, how do you not be a simp? You have to value being yourself more than you value the relationship. Once you value the relationship more than you value yourself, you're a simp, because you would compromise anything about yourself in order to have the relationship. If you're super lonely and you're feeling that pain and that angst, and I definitely, I know what that feels like. We all know what that feels like, to just feel alone. It sucks. And it doesn't go away. It's like you're lonely until you find someone. It will make, what happens then is that I don't think you're necessarily lowering your self-worth, but you're increasing your worth for relationships to the point where it ends up actually being higher than your self-worth. You're just putting it all up in the sky. So again, finding ways in the meantime to be able to cope with one's loneliness if one does not have a partner, to be able to be resilient enough to wait for that person who will really love you for who you are, that would be a positive thing. I'm not really going to get into that right now, exactly how to do that. I feel like that could probably be an entire podcast by itself of how to deal with loneliness. But finding any way to, again, to cope with loneliness will definitely help you wait for the right person. There's also not every relationship that person has needs to be lifelong. This is my life partner. Like, people can have casual relationships. It's probably very good to be forthcoming, and there should be good communication, and you can have something that's more casual where you don't need the person to appreciate you deeply for who you are and have this true love. You can have friends. Some people, just friends really solve their loneliness, but it could even be more of a romantic nature, that you're just being clear that this is a casual relationship, and when one of us or both of us find someone who we feel like we really are going to fall in love with, so maybe this is not going to work out. I think that you can really sort of start casual relationships on that premise, and that will definitely, that's probably the most effective way to sort of stifle one's loneliness, in order to really be able to wait to find that person who you're just going to be completely yourself and the person's going to love you for who you are. Now, even in a casual relationship, you still need a balance. Like, even though you're maybe going to be a little more flexible and not let the person in that much, because you sort of have the sense that the person's not necessarily going to appreciate you holistically and completely. Again, you still need to be a little bit of yourself in order to be an attractive person, even for a casual relationship. But certainly, if you're going for that really deep, loving relationship, there's absolutely no point in faking anything, and there's no point in putting the relationship value of the relationship over the value of yourself. And being a simp is certainly not the way. Being an inflexible douchebag is certainly not the way. Best way is just this good balance of feeling confident, being yourself, and being considerate to the other person, but not to the point where you value them more than you value yourself. I'll talk to the chat a little bit about that, and then I want to get into a couple of other things. I want to actually talk about when it comes to being a businessman, or being a politician, or being a YouTuber, or being even an online person, being someone in a Twitch chat. Like, where then do you strike the balance between being yourself and being confident, not caring what other people think, or actually being sensitive to other people's feelings? I feel like that's going to be sort of a separate topic, so maybe I'll chat with you guys a little bit about the relationship one, and then we'll sort of get into that. Can you save an entire stream from Twitch? There's apps that allow you to do that. Just look it up on Google. And Twitch doesn't have a way to built in to save an entire stream. I'm going to probably put these rants on YouTube eventually. Can you upload the stream to YouTube? I plan on something I'm working on now. I don't know when it's going to happen, but I do plan on sort of taking like probably not the entire stream, but just taking like the individual ramps, slapping a title on it, and just sort of uploading it to that. I'll probably edit out a little bit if I'm thinking, like, you know, I like to gather my thoughts a little bit. I'll edit that part out and just put that up on YouTube. So. All right, I'm just going to start looking at the chat kind of one at a time. Should I turn on the chat for this part? Let's try it. I'll do an experiment where I actually turn on the chat for this part. Electric Boogaloo is asking, I'm kind of a simp. How do you change? So again, you don't have to. If you want to be with someone who is a dominant woman, you want someone who's a nice, strong, it could be you could really get away with it. Now, there are strong women who want a guy who's even stronger. There is that too. But you can find someone, if you're okay being a submissive, so then you can sort of assume that role in your relationship. I know a lot of girls that are very, people find them very, very attractive. That's why it's sort of, I'm not going to get into the gender balance thing. I could get into it a little bit now. They're probably, on average, males tend to adapt naturally to be more dominant and females to be more submissive. There, I freaking said it. Now, that doesn't mean that we should be discriminating against submissive guys, or say that, well, girls all have to be submissive and all have to be dominant. There's obviously a lot of exceptions, and we all have the capability of adapting in a lot of round of ways. And it's very close-minded to just say that since on average, guys are a little more dominant and women are a little more submissive, that therefore that applies to everyone equally. I know, it's a really politically incorrect thing to say that on average, guys are more dominant and women are more submissive. But if you just go and actually meet people in the dating world, you'll find a lot of exceptions, but it's just more prevalent. I happen to be part of sort of a community that is very, it's like Its base is called FetLife. It's a community that your people are very open, discussing what their kinks are and what their specific sexual attractions are, and that sort of thing. I have a lot of friends in that sort of community, and there's plenty of dominant women and plenty of submissive guys. I mean, there's an abundance of both of those, but just from my experience in general, there are more guys who are dominant and more women who are submissive. How is it politically incorrect? It's a general observation. The reason it's politically incorrect is because people will hear men are more dominant, women are more submissive, and they'll go to, oh, you're saying that because I'm a woman, so therefore I'm not allowed to be a CEO or the president or the business leader. And obviously, that's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying there is a huge, huge spectrum, all of which is valid. The fact that you are saying, now, the reason that attitude of where women can't be leaders, that attitude comes from this observation that on average women are more submissive. The problem is when people extrapolate and say, well, since the average woman's more submissive, so now, therefore, all women must be that way. That's the problem. The problem isn't the actual observation. The problem is the extrapolation is that people need to act average. And if their temperament or they choose to act different than the average, that's not okay. That is intolerance. You can actually have real observations like this and still be very tolerant of people being different than the average and that just being completely okay. So again, what do you do if you feel like you're naturally a simp? So one is to actually focus on yourself and really reflect on yourself in terms of how valuable you are. Everyone has qualities about them which are attractive, which are valuable. Everyone has value. If you focus on those to the point where you are, first of all, building up your self-value, you're going to be less of a simp because you're going to value yourself more than simping yourself out for some girl. Again, the second thing would be to try to be less desperate for relationships, and try to somehow deal with the loneliness or develop casual relationships or friends or whatever the thing you need it is in order to be patient, that you're not valuing relationships too much. And the third thing is if you feel natural being submissive, then go ahead and do it. If you feel natural melding yourself, try to still maintain some of your charm because I'm sure that you have that. But go ahead and do that if that's what you actually want. The problem of being a simp is for a guy who actually wants to be the more dominant role in the relationship, yet is acting in a way because he's so desperate that he's acting in a way that someone submissive more would act. Go on to the next one. Moo Moo with the highlighted comment. Fry, do you know the subreddit Are Nice Guys? It's a subreddit talking about the type of guys who just feels entitled to a woman just because they are something, high position, money, talented, successful. It's basically the complete opposite of a simp to the other extreme. So that's what I was talking about being a douchebag. There needs to be a balance. Someone who's loving and compromising without being annoying qualities. Exactly. So again, if you're losing yourself, you're a simp. If you are so stubborn and not being flexible at all, then you're a douchebag. It's a matter of how flexible you are. Fry has good opinions. He doesn't just follow everyone else says. I want to talk about that in a second. I want to talk about how that actually applies to these sort of podcasts and how it applies to being someone who's putting myself on the internet. I mean, for all I know, anything I say on the internet is there forever. Someone could literally come to this thing, take just a portion where I said, on average, girls are more submissive and guys are more dominant. Take that completely out of context. Edit out the part where I explain myself that we should actually be tolerant to people who are different. That it's just an observation, and where I explain that that is just simply a personal observation. I'm not backing it up with any kind of data or facts. I mean, maybe we can do that. Maybe that would be possible to do. And then they're going to go and they're going to put on Twitter, Fry is a big-time sexist, anti-feminist, and he's a misogynist, and he thinks that all women need to be housewives and need to be submissive, and women shouldn't be able to be president. Someone will do that, and great. I want to talk about in a little bit how I feel like you can be a YouTuber can be a simp too if you care too much about what people are going to think about you. That's the next topic I want to talk about. Botanist, secret agent, gladiator? I never thought about botanist, secret agent. Or, Oh, people are sending me PVZ decks. We're not talking about PVZ, guys, but I am writing down this idea because I like it a lot. Gosh, I shouldn't even write it down. Principle. Gotta be disciplined. Okay, it's gonna be botanist, monkey, pirate, secret agent, mixed up gravedigger. Oh my gosh. And pogo. Oh my gosh. I never thought of using secret agent with active abilities like that. It's actually a really good idea. You can run synchronized swimmer in that deck and you actually have a second use out of the secret agent. Damn, that's probably actually how you secret agent. I can't believe I fell for this. Okay, sorry, no more PVZ. Why am I doing this stream? I just feel like I feel like I'm good at taking really complicated concepts, breaking it down, looking at it from a lot of different perspectives and explaining it in a way that's much more than just trolly douchebaggery like usually people, oh, it's a simp. Like there's actually a real thing there, and I don't know, I just feel like I'm good at explaining it, and I think I value clear communication and people not misusing words. Now, you know, I guess I misuse words sometimes myself, but I just feel like I want to, I don't know, help people understand themselves. That's a good thing. And communicate with each other better. Just take your time. Yeah, it's really, really hard. Your Ozone's giving some poetic encouragement to lonely people. You have to take some initiative. By the way, I didn't even get into this, which I'm really not. I feel like I can make a podcast in terms of actually how to find a partner, which is really not what I'm focusing on. But in my experience, relying on dating apps and staying at home, you're never. I mean, there's plenty of people who date from online apps and stuff like that. You gotta go and put yourself out in the world. It's just from my experience. It's very, very hard, especially for guys. Girls, it's easier to find dates on online apps. I don't really know why. I think because guys are more desperate, so there's more loneliness, and then the guys are constantly looking for people, and girls are able to. I think females are actually a lot better at like being okay being single, just from my experience. Obviously, there's so many exceptions, but I do know that on the online dating, people I know, females who I know who are online dating, get messages from like guys. They're so unselective, so they'll just send messages, mass messages to everyone. They get all this interest from a lot of people, and that what they have to do is like filter out all the douchebags and all the simps and actually find one that's decent. The guys who are on online dating send 30 messages to someone and get one reply from someone who's not even that interesting, and it doesn't work out. Again, it's possible to get dates from online apps. It's definitely possible. A lot of people do that, but the best way, if you actually feel like you have charisma and value and you're at least somewhat extroverted, just put yourself out there. Go to a meetup. I like going to these Fat Life events. You could probably find that sometime. Go to a place where you're actually going to be interacting one-on-one. And I feel like that sort of portrays a certain, you have to feel confident about it, but it shows this confidence that you have to actually get yourself out there. If you're just kind of just another name on the internet, it's not a very attractive thing for guys. 80% of females go for 20% of the men, 80% of men go for 20% of the women. You mean 80% of the men go for 100% of the women. I think that's what you meant. But that is sort of the phenomena of males being more selective and females being more selective and males being less selective. That's actually how it works for almost all mammals, is that the guys are very happy spreading their seed to a lot of different females, but the females are very selective and they say, no, I'm only going to accept the strongest and most dominant male as my partner. That's way worse with lions, wolves, dogs, cats. It doesn't even matter. You start getting to insects and fish, it starts changing a little bit. But for almost all mammals, that's the way it works. And that's why you end up with these lions, and for probably most of human history too, is where you had the one guy with like a lot of wives and a lot of partners, and then you have a lot of single guys. Is because the females are super selective and the guys are not very selective. Take advice from his podcast and make it a philosophical book. I'm gonna start trying to put up these rants on YouTube first, and then we'll talk about our book. You know what I mean? Catfishes. I don't know. You're so nice, huh? Thank you so much, Boona Bird. Philosopher. I'm just gonna see if the chat has anything more to say, and then I want to get into the next subject, which is something I struggle with personally, but I feel like it's something I usually just talk about on the podcast whatever I'm struggling with personally, whatever I'm trying to figure out in my own personal life. This is something, both in my relationships and my career. So I'm going to talk about the career one next. Spreading their seedlings, exactly. Pomegranates. Never watch one of the real streams. Look at humans with spider traits. Lays eggs and eats the male, exactly. But there's a biological reason, by the way, just to explain a little bit of a kind of a more biological explanation of why males and females are different in that way. A male will have more babies with the more females that they mate with, meaning them having mating with 10 females, you're going to end up with 10 times as many babies passed to the next generation than a male who's only mating with one female. Now, a female who has 10 male mates has exactly the same amount of babies. In fact, there's a very good chance that their babies are going to be inferior if the one that happens to make them pregnant is the least strong, let's say physically strong, whatever the good qualities are to pass the genes on to the next generation. It's actually much riskier to have a lot of partners. It's much better to be very, very selective and just have the one. So that's the reason why when it came to genetics and the traits that got passed down ended up being different for males and females that way, is that the males who ended up being less selective ended up passing more of their genes to the next generation, and the females who were more selective, also their children ended up surviving more, so they also passed down their genes to the next generation more. And that's the reason why. It's just because the female carries the child in mammals. As opposed to, laying eggs and things like this, it would be different. It could be, I don't know if there's any species that the more times they mate, it's just the amount of eggs they create is just once per every time they mate, and there's no limit. It could be that in that case, then a female having a lot of partners would actually be advantageous. It would actually switch it around. But that would be the reason why it was passed. Obviously, there's exceptions. You have males who are very selective, women who are not. But in general, that's the reason the way it is, because that is the sort of natural thing that was passed down, because that is the highest level of survivability. So whatever makes one survive more, that's usually the way the population ends up being after many generations. I don't know, Charlotte's Web. Polygamy? No, I think polygamy is a very natural. I don't think it's an unnatural thing. I think that's actually polygamy, which is one man having a lot of wives. Let's say in a social environment where people are getting married, but one man having a lot of partners and there being a lot of single guys. I really think that is the. I think that's the There's something actually biologically natural about that. Now, I'm not advocating polygamy. There's a lot of advantages of not having that, because you end up with a lot less single guys. If you get rid of polygamy, then you end up with a lot fewer single guys, which ends up being a lot better for a lot of other reasons too. But there's something Fry talks about. See, we're talking about dating and sex now. Not really about sex. We're more talking about sexual attraction. That's actually what we're talking about. Fry, the alpha male, passes his knowledge to his underlings. Not exactly. Douchebags are narcissistic overall rude. They could be neither. They could just be unflexible. You can have a douchebag who's not narcissistic. I don't know. Is a narcissistic is the definition of a narcissist someone who just doesn't care about anyone besides for themselves, and they'll be themselves. They won't adjust at all. They're inflexible. If being inflexible is the same as being a narcissist, then yeah. How do I know if you like someone? Because I don't know. I just like their company, or if I actually like them. If you feel attracted to them, then you're attracted to them. I don't know what the like is. On top of that. If you feel attracted to them, you're attracted to them. If not, not. Now, the question is this person going to be good to be with? Is the person going to be, you know, a good person to be in a relationship with? You have to use your wisdom for that. That's a very complicated subject. This is one of them. We want a person who's not too simpy, but also not too douchebaggy. But there's nothing external that can define your feelings for you. If you're attracted to someone, you're attracted for someone, and that's it. I don't really understand. Do you look at someone and think, oh, that's hot? Because if not, you don't love them? If you do, then you like them? There's a difference also between just being like superficially sexually attracted to someone and actually looking at them as a valuable mate that you want to be in a long-term relationship. Very, very different sets of criteria. There's some criteria which are similar. I would say this thing we're talking about being self-confident enough but still being flexible, I feel like there is, you know, a certain balance that applies to both of those, but the balance is very, very different. A person who's much, much more self-confident will probably very often be more attractive, but a lot less good relationship material. Someone's more flexible. Someone who's more flexible, it might not be as hot, but it's probably a lot better for a long-term relationship. Obviously, it depends on the person. Fry, watch out for the government. They don't like people with opinions. I don't know. Do you think it's right to wait till marriage for sex? There's advantages and disadvantages. That's a whole topic. There's advantages both ways. I would say back in the day, before there was birth control, it was definitely hugely advantageous to not have sex until you're married to someone and you have a long-term agreement with them. Nowadays, if there's birth control, it becomes a lot less important because you're not necessarily going to have babies. Holding hands before marriage, similar thing. Would you say that changing your character to please a woman is always bad? If you're an annoying person in nature, you should change yourself to be more positive. So again, it just comes down to what you want. Now, if you at all being yourself because you're just a freaking annoying, just charmless person, and the only way you're going to ever be able to have a partner is by completely not being yourself and being a complete fake, that's an extreme scenario, and maybe because you're such an extremely uncharismatic and annoying person, it would be good to adapt in a very extreme way and to just, you know, be a freaking faker in every relationship. So I think instead of changing that and being a faker, how about work on yourself? I think a person who is very annoying can work on themselves to actually have a little bit of a better taste and to be more charismatic and just a little more aware of other people's feelings and to sort of observe the difference between annoying people and not. And if you value not being annoying, you can actually change yourself in that way, and that will actually make you in general a more charming person. I think a person saying, hey, I want to be a more charismatic person, that's just a matter of adapting. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm going to get into that in a second in terms of in general in the world, how much should you adapt and change yourself to please other people and seek their recognition. I really want to get into that now, so I think I'm going to get right into that right now. You can only kiss her after being married for 40 years. All right. Joss track on. Love you guys too. This is a PG stream. Yes, this is definitely PG-13. PG? It's PG-13. Strictly. All right. So let's talk about the other thing. Great way to transition into this. How much should a person, forget about relationships right now, how much should a person in general adjust the way they are and work on themselves to be a person that will get approval from others? This is if anything, this really might be a much harder question, because I feel like when it comes to relationships, the thing that makes it simple is that you just want to like be yourself. You want to feel loved. So the more like yourself you are, being yourself and being flexible, that's the way. I don't know about this other thing. I'm going to probably switch this now from podcast mode to just chatting mode. Should I change the topic in the stream? Okay, I'm going to change it to just chatting. It's so, like, there's such a big difference between talk show and podcast and just chatting. I know. It's so different. But maybe I'll do it just to sort of subconsciously sort of change my mode here. Because I don't feel like I have this completely clear. I'll tell you, make rated X streams. I'll tell you what I do have. Someone being out of your class. Okay, I'll talk to you guys about that in a second. Here, let's get into, I'm going to turn off the chat now. Whoop. How do you turn this off? There. I love this background. It's so cool. We did a little podcast background brainstorm session at the end of one of the PvZ streams, and someone found this and was like, yes, I love that globe. It's so good. I'm drinking water out of a liquor bottle. Don't ask me why. Ferrari, Porsche, McLaren, Honda Accord. I'm a simple man. Okay. I feel like it gets more complicated when you're talking about how to interact with society as a whole, particularly if you're someone who's putting yourself on a public stage like I am, like any YouTuber is, like any politician is, but even if you're like a member of really any large community, how much should you be yourself and how much should you change yourself? There's two things. One is changing yourself in order to please other people, changing who you are, adapting in that way. And the other is not even changing yourself. You're not changing anything about your actual core personality, but you're just presenting. You're lying. You're not it doesn't mean you're necessarily explicitly lying, but you're just rather withholding information that you do not want people to know about you because you think that they will not approve. Having your sort of privacy. This is a really, really tough balance. I feel like I'm still sort of figuring this out as a YouTuber, where to strike this balance. For example, when I do the PvZ streams, I'm typically very politically correct. Now, the way I am during the PvZ streams is, for me, very politically correct. I know a lot of people think it's not. People probably think the French laughing and the Russian accents and the and all the, I don't know, and all the your mom jokes, and I'm sure a lot of people think I'm super politically incorrect, because political correctness gets really, really extreme, you know what I mean? But I would say relatively, I'm very mild. I don't really talk about controversial topics very much. I usually just make it all about the games and about just having fun and jokes. When I'm in podcast mode like I am right now, though, I'm letting it all loose. I know that the opinions I have are going to be super, super offensive, triggering. It's going to remind people of things which they have suffered from. That's what offensive means to a lot of people. And in order to do this and actually put your opinions out there, you have to not care. Can I say I don't care at all? I do care. Because I care for the people, and I really hope that we're able to get to a point where people are able to be more tolerant of people having a different opinion to them and not go crazy. So the fact that they're in pain, I empathize, but I'm not going to adjust what I'm saying and not say what I really think is the truth because of your trauma. I think that's ridiculous. I think limiting freedom of speech because there's traumatized people in the world, so you shouldn't even, important topics, even jokes, to limit, let's say, insist that people can say whatever they want, and it's a good thing there's no laws against comedians joking about things. Now, there was a time, not that long ago, we're talking about in the 20th century, early 20th century, that comedians, stand-up comedians, would get arrested for saying jokes that were too vulgar, that talked about sex too much, or were too offensive, whatever offensive is. Man, nowadays it's the liberals that get very offended. Back then it was the conservatives who get offended. It just depends on the political climate. But comedians would be arrested for saying offensive things. It was actually illegal. It was called vulgarity. I don't know what it was. Profanity, yeah? I don't believe in that. I think that a comedian should be allowed to joke, especially if they're joking. But even if you're not joking, even if you have an opinion about whatever, a serious opinion, and someone's offended by it, it's just part of freedom of speech. Once you start limiting that, and you say if a person has a genuine opinion or a joke to say, doesn't matter what, about something, and because it offends someone, it's now illegal, which means we're all going to decide to point our guns to the person and say, you shall not say that or we will shoot you in the face and lock you in jail. You're basically one step away from being a fascist society. Because that's exactly what fascists do. They just do it about more things. But once you set that precedent, you're basically on your way to fascism. That's really the whole difference. If you want people to respect your opinions, even when they don't agree with you, how about you do this exact same consideration, that when they say something that matters a lot to you, that you're offended by, you tolerate them. You don't have to agree with them, but tolerate it. The difference between tolerance means is that you're okay with the person having the opinion, even though you think it's wrong and dangerous and disagree with it, and it's something that really matters to you. Everyone's tolerant about things that they don't care about, that don't matter to them. It's only the moment that you actually care about a subject, that's when the question of tolerance begins. And being tolerant means even if you have a person who has the most destructive attitude, tolerate them saying it. Now, doing something destructive is different. I don't think you have to tolerate actions as much as you tolerate opinions and views. But all actions are just come from views. Good. Get all the views on the table. Everyone say your views, and we're going to decide together what our legislation is going to be and what's going to be legal, illegal. We're going to decide together which actions we will tolerate and which ones we consider to be a danger to society. But the fact that silencing people that they shouldn't even be able to explain their opinion it's fascism. It's complete fascism. We went from simps to comedians. Well, really what we're talking about now is simps is more of a term when it comes to relationships. But how much should a person be a simp and not be a douchebag? How much should a person adjust themselves to the wills of other people when it comes to society, when it comes to being a politician, when it comes to being a YouTuber? Can I tell you guys something? I honestly think the reason that Trump beat Hillary Clinton in the 2016 election is because Trump was a douchebag and Hillary Clinton was a simp. And people trust a douchebag who's at least being genuine more than they trust a simp, who will just say whatever they need, will be flex however they need to, and they'll twist themselves into whatever image they need to be in order to appeal to the most amount of people. People do not trust someone like that. You probably even people who voted for Hillary because of the politics. I'm not saying that's why everyone voted for Hillary, and that's exactly why everyone voted. Probably a lot of people were very politically motivated, but I think people who were not politically motivated, people who were centrists, who really didn't see the clear advantages of one way or the other politically, they do end up basing on how much do they trust the person. And if you have a person who, I mean, just look at that. This is why Hillary Clinton was such a horrible candidate in the last election. She wasn't a genuine person. It's so clear and obvious. She's just like, imagine if someone would go to Hillary and say, hey, you know what? I think you'll really win this election if you run this certain platform. Try to be really pro this and probably try to be really anti that. She'll do it. She just had that personality that she cared a lot more about becoming president than about the actual topic she was talking about. Now, Trump was exactly the opposite. He took the complete opposite approach, which was, I am going to completely believe in myself and my opinions, and I'm going to bring people up to my level. Now, there is something unattractive about that, because you definitely want a person leading a country to be more flexible, and I really don't think that he's a flexible enough person. I think that's a legitimate criticism of him as being a leader, but at least he's being genuine, and I think that appealed to a lot more people that you need to be able to trust. Besides for the actual politics and actual policies they have, you have to feel like if you're going to elect someone to office, you need to be able to trust them. And just the fact that he was, for a lot of things, just being himself, and you kind of like knew what you were getting, that was much more attractive than the alternative of Hillary, where you just have no idea what the person actually thinks inside. They're not letting you in at all. I think Obama was a pretty good balance, because I think there were a lot of times where he was very himself, and sort of he has this radical sort of side to him, which he was very, very strong about, but he also had this flexibility, and he's not going to be, he wasn't an asshole. He's a very charming, very charismatic person, not just in terms of his personality, but in terms of being able to adapt. He was not the stubborn guy like Donald Trump is. I really think Obama that's the reason why he was a great candidate, personality-wise, besides for also just being an extremely, extremely charming person. I really think there were a lot of people they could have ran against Trump who would have beaten him, because Trump was too much of a douchebag. The same way there's a lot of people who could have ran against Hillary who also would have beaten Hillary. I really think that neither of those candidates were really great. I don't really know which Republican candidate. I don't know. There might even be an advantage of being a douchebag, though, or being a simp, because the Hillary Clinton is going to appeal a lot more to all the traumatized people, because traumatized people, they're going to vote for someone. They're not going to vote for someone necessarily who has better policies. They're going to vote for a person who triggers them less. If one person triggers them, the other person doesn't, they're always going to vote for the person who doesn't trigger them. They're not going to start making a rational decision at that point. Well, whose politics are actually better? They don't have that freedom. The more trauma and the more mental health issues a person has, the easier they are to be manipulated, because all a person has to do to fall in favor of you is be less triggery than the alternative, and then you vote for them. So being the Hillary Clinton simp politically was a lot better for the trigger happy people, for the people get egg as well. Being a self-confident, just being completely yourself. I explain more douchebag as someone who is unflexible. They value themselves to the point where they're not willing to be flexible at all out of consideration for another person. Just to get our definitions clear for those of you just joining us right now. Truest thing you ever heard? I'm just gonna grab some water, because I actually when I rant like this for hours, which it's been an hour now, I do have a voice stamina problem, and if this persists, I'm gonna have to get some. There actually is voice training to solve this problem. I used to have this more when I would rant more. I feel like with PVZ, I'm talking for 2 hours, but maybe it's not as rapidly. Maybe I'm actually saying more words when I'm doing a podcast than when I play PVZ. Probably, I'm thinking more. I probably say as much in 15 minutes as when I'm ranting than in an hour of PVZ. But anyway, I'm going to get some water. I'll be right back. We talked politically. There's another part of this which is going to be, what about with your family and your friends and your community? Let's try to, and as a YouTuber too. We'll get into that in a second. I had some cough drops here somewhere. Where the heck did I put them? Today's stream is sponsored by Ricola. Do you have a sore throat? Are you a YouTuber with very little voice stamina? Try Ricola now. I don't know where it is. Where the heck is my Ricola? Oh, here it is. It's Halls. It has sugar in it. Some sugar. I don't know. I can't find it. I found some Halls. These have sugar in them, but oh well. Try not to eat refined sugar. It's fine. All right. Mmm. They're so spicy. It's obvious it's a green screen without me on screen. It looks super fake. See, it actually makes it fuzzy. It only it only makes it smooths it out. Like you have to adjust the camera to be like filter out enough of the green, but not too much, because then it starts filtering out your face. You always adjust it to when you're there. The camera like changes when you're not there. The color balance gets thrown off. How would I tell a person to start a channel on YouTube? The main thing is pick something that people are interested in, that there is not already a lot of content being created for, and stick to that. The best way to start off is niche. But get good at it. Be patient. Be patient having no one watching you. You gotta do it for months and months, many months with almost no one watching you, just to get good. And also the YouTube algorithm doesn't let people get on the scene right away. It's almost impossible. It's not reliable. It happens to some people, they blow up. But for every one person that happens to, there's literally a million that doesn't work. Only reliable way is consistency. It does look really good. This background looks amazing, actually. When the when the settings are configured. That's the question. Is it better to have a president who's too flexible, or is it better to have, who's very flexible, or is it better to have someone who's very strong? It really depends on the situation, That's really a big political difference in a lot of leaders. Some people Trump's a person who takes a really hard line on everything. And I think in that way he was probably a lot more successful than Obama when it came to negotiating with like North Korea and China and all these peoples, because taking a hard line with people sometimes what you got to do. I think Obama was not necessarily good enough at taking a hard line with when it was necessary. Trump's kind of person, like, Gaddafi freaking breaks his agreements, go ahead, kill him, you know what I mean? There's like a really hard line that sometimes it ended up that for the United States, that ended up turning out fine. Even though it was dangerous, but anyway. Oh, I'm not getting into new subjects now. I want to talk about now I'll just talk about something a little personal. Let's say for a YouTuber, but this is really going to apply. A YouTuber is such an extreme example of it, so that's why I'm going to go with this first. But really, this will apply to any person who is having a voice in any kind of community. I have a voice now in the YouTube or Twitch community. People can choose to be part of my community, to follow me, or not to. And that's really what it comes down to. Is it better to be more politically correct, or is it better to be just more self-confident, closer to the douchebag? Or is it better to be super balanced? I guess it really depends what you're talking about, what the priority is. I would say, like, if you're trying to appeal to the most people possible, to trigger as few people as possible, it's probably better to be more flexible and less yourself. More of a simp. I think it really depends on the subject. If you're talking about real subjects like this, I would say probably being more confident and more yourself is going to be the thing. Because no one's going to want to listen to someone really ambiguous and being super careful and super politically correct. No one's going to want to hear that person not being genuine talk about real topics. Now, if you're being a gamer, I don't know if you have to really let people in. Like, I think the more the gamer, if you just think who are like the big gamer YouTubers, or like PewDiePie, Markiplier, Jacksepticeye, you can even throw like HZ1Z, and you can throw Video Game Donkey in there, because why not? Like, these people, none of them are controversial. PewDiePie was, and he suffered a lot from it. He lost a lot of, endorsements. I don't know if he lost a lot of subscribers, really. I don't think the gaming community actually cares about political correctness, which was the place he stumbled, but they do care about some things. Like, imagine if Markiplier would endorse, in the 2020 election, endorse one of the two presidential candidates and say, this is who I believe in, and give a whole reason why. That would be the dumbest thing to do. He would lose subscribers from it. A lot. Because people are not so tolerant. People are intolerant. If you're a gamer and you're a comedy, so just stay out of the controversial subjects. Now, if you're doing this sort of stream, or I would say the same thing about myself for the PVZ, exactly the same thing. Like, why do I don't want to make those political. I just want it to be, it's really the opposite. I want, no matter how tolerant or intolerant you are, even if you're a super intolerant person, everyone has to agree with you about everything that matters to you, or else you hate them. Let's still have fun together. Like, it's nice to have things like video games that we can actually relate to each other and have fun to each other, and be able to see that people with different opinions than you are not that bad. You want to be able to have that common ground. Now, when it comes to these type of things, which is talking about truth, I don't know if filtering anything is really correct. I guess there's a certain sensitivity. Like, you don't want to say things that you're just so inflexible, and you'll just say things that just offend people for no reason. There should probably be like a reason that you're taking a stance. It's a little bit of a hard. I'm gonna just talk to the chat about this because I want to tell you something about myself. I'm going to give you one thing about myself that a lot of people will not find attractive. I'll be super forthcoming about this because it's something I'm just sort of considering. If there is someone who gets offended by an opinion of mine and they're super hurt, from me, it's my genuine opinion. It's what I actually think is reasonable and logical, and whatever I'm able to do, whatever I don't know why the light keeps switching. Whatever my abilities are, I'm using that to formulate what I think is a really smart opinion. And a person finds that opinion of mine offended, and they're actually hurt. They're having actual emotional and physiological pain from that. On the one hand, I empathize, you're in pain, I care about you, but on the other hand, you can go screw yourself. I don't care. I'm not going to not say my opinion because you're freaking offended. This is, I know that deep down, that is who I am. And I don't think there's any other way to live your life. You can't, I think this is a huge problem. It's unavoidable. You can't, it's like you can't, a politician, for example, can't necessarily be that way or else they're not going to get elected. This is a really hard thing. Natural selection, if you're talking about on a societal level, has definitely favored people who are less forthcoming, who are going to more try to not trigger people. Because the people who trigger people, they're not able to get as many followers, not able to get as much support, so therefore they're not going to have as much power. They're not going to get as many votes. So, I don't have a formulated strong opinion in terms of what is right and what is wrong, what's moral and immoral. I'm struggling with this. I know deep down I don't give a crap. If you are offended by an opinion of mine, I'm sorry, I empathize. I'm sorry you're in pain, but I really don't care. You're attacking me. By me having this opinion and you're getting offended, I am not attacking. You feel attacked, but that's because you're traumatized. You have a mental illness. If you're offended by me merely having an opinion, that's different than yours. You are the one, you expressing that to me, you're attacking me. I'm not attacking you by expressing an opinion that is different than yours about a subject you care about. Even though you feel attacked. You feel attacked, but you're wrong. You're wrong. It's not your fault. I'm not going to blame you. You have a trauma, so I can't blame you for it, and I feel very, very bad that you're going through this pain, but I don't actually care. You see the difference? I care on a personal level, but on an intellectual level, I don't care at all. I don't know if you can get this is not, everyone, in order for even Trump, let's say, who total douchebag, not flexible at all, he still is a politician for a lot of things. I'll give you a really good example. Whenever he talks about religion or God, Trump is a total faker. Believe you me, he is an atheist. You think he believes in God? You think he's like religious man? He does this thing every once in a while in order to completely pander to his Republican base. A lot of them are devout Christians. He'll say we trust in. He'll always throw in one sentence in every big speech he gives, whether it's the State of the Union or whatever he's doing, something about God, and we're gonna trust that in solidarity in God that is gonna. He always like says this fake set. You know what I'm talking about in every speech. He does not. He's not a man of faith. He believes in himself a lot. You know what I mean? He doesn't believe in God. He certainly doesn't believe in Christianity. He's definitely not a Christian. You know what I mean? And all these Christian phrases he throws out, it's complete BS. And the sad thing is that if a person does not lie like that, if they don't BS and pander to a thing, pandering means you're going to say things not genuinely. It's not what you actually believe, but you're only doing it in order to attract a certain crowd who does believe in that thing. That's called pandering. A person who doesn't pander is never going to become president. They're never going to get elected. You can't do it because people are so intolerant of you not believing in Christianity that they won't vote for you unless you're a Christian, or unless you at least say something that makes them God something. He's more of a Democrat than a Republican, too. Those terms are very, very relative. He's a very, very liberal. He's overall a very liberal person. It's just a very matter of nuance that couple things in the political climate could have changed. That Trump could have had all of the exact same subjects and he would be a Democrat and not a Republican. 30 years ago, he definitely would have been Democrat. With all of his opinions, he would have definitely been a Democrat. Do you think playing the victim card is a bad thing? We'll get into that in a little bit. It's a long subject. You have a lot of big subjects, but we'll try to deal with them one at a time. I'm not a big believer of playing victim cards, though. If I can answer that in one question, I feel like it needs a lot more attention than that. So what are we actually talking about? It always gets back to Trump. He's a great example for so many things. He's so extreme. When you find an example of something, you want to find extreme things. So if you have a person that everyone knows about, so they're relatable, because everyone has had contact with them, and they're so extreme in a lot of ways, very easy to use for examples for a lot of things. It always gets back to capitalism, Trump, and racism. Those are the three things. We always just, everything funnels back to them. Our three go-to subjects. Capitalism. Who's going to get more I want to hear the chat. I'll turn it on. Who's going to get more followers? The person who's themselves, who's confident, who's not going to be flexible, is going to spit the truth? Or the person's going to be politically correct and not say anything controversial? Who's going to get more subscribers on YouTube? What do you think, guys? Anyone? The light reflecting on my head on the opposite direction of the green screen makes it look fake. Yeah, not bad. I'm recording this at night. The fact that the light is not moving at all is the fakest part of this. There's even a stagnant clock up there, which I made above the scope of the stream, just because a still clock is not gonna be good. So I would say if you're going for sheer numbers, the answer is to be more politically correct and less yourself. The less you are, the less controversial you are, the more. I think the numbers really, really dictate that. And just look who are the biggest YouTubers. Least controversial. I guess PewDiePie is more of it. He's still very, very uncontroversial. You know? But you still, even those people need to have a certain element of being themselves. I would say if you're looking for an actual more devoted following, like a tighter knit following, I would say being more controversial is better. The greatest example of that is ContraPoints. I don't know if any of you know who that is. That's a trans woman, very political YouTuber with a not as many subscribers as PewDiePie, but a freaking hell crap ton of Patreon supporters. If you look how much money she is making on Patreon, it is so she's making 6 digits a year on Patreon alone without any ad revenue or anything like that. Markiplier was gaining traction, was more obscene. When was he obscene? I've never seen him do anything obscene or controversial. He's kind of more out there. He's very eccentric, but I don't remember him being controversial ever. I think you have to be a little edgy. You have to have a little sense of humor. Something's trotting on the line. I guess it's a balance, because you're as long as you're not offending people. Once you start offending people, you always lose. But if you can get close to that line where you're not really offending any major population, only a few people here and there, but you're being more edgy and more like this, probably gain. I guess that's really the balance. Gay comments? I want to see this. I'm actually curious. Personally. Nothing but dick jokes. What is this? I don't really watch these people, to be honest. Filthy Frank? See, Filthy Frank did the opposite. He really did the opposite. He got the following, a huge following, from being as edgy as possible. In order to... See, if you're just a little edgy, you're not going to gain from your edginess. I guess you will a little bit. It's interesting. You're right, though. I would say, like, Jacksepticeye and Filthy Frank are exact opposite YouTubers, but they both have massive followings. So maybe it's just about charisma. He was able to pull it off because he's Filthy Frank, a charismatic fellow. It's cool how he stopped making. It's hard. It's hard to be that. It's hard to be that edgy though. It's a really hard life because you have people you're getting death threats every day on YouTube comments and stuff. What about the Paul brothers? Again, I feel like every YouTuber has to strike that balance. I don't get it. For me, Logan and Jake Paul have no appeal to me. I don't find them even particularly charismatic at all. For me, they're just like they're like children. It just doesn't... I totally understand why teenagers like them. I have a brother who's a teenager. I totally understand, now he's a little bit older, but like a few years ago, I totally understand why people his age would like the Paul brothers, you know? So actually, it's all see, again, you're saying he is pretty edgy. You're right, but it's all a balance. You're right. She is actually probably much more on the edgy side, and a very, very popular YouTuber. It's just, I never really thought of him as a role model, and I don't really watch his podcast at all. Even though I did watch when he interviewed Donkey, I think that was fun. I don't necessarily find his personality that attractive, to be honest. I don't find him very charming. Even though I probably have respect for him, professional respect for him, because I think He's very, very good at doing what he does, and he also has the self-confidence to be super edgy. I think they even sued someone over like freedom of speech, where they sued someone for like defamation and won, and then they celebrated it. I love that kind of thing. Teens that hate the Pauls rising. I would say that I think Jake Paul is the one I'm more familiar with. Less familiar with Logan. Is he does sort of have that basically as douchebaggy as you can be on and get away with. He probably actually is complete douchebag, in my opinion. He does apologize for things, something, but he comes off to me as being full-on douchebag, which you can actually see. You're not in a relationship. How many people who like Jake Paul would want to be in a long-term relationship with him? In their right mind, obviously, there might be something fleetingly romantic about that if you find him attractive, but like. I don't think anyone in their right mind would want to date someone who's that inflexible. I can't really judge him. I can't say I know him personally. It's just the impression I get. The N-word? Oh man. We're gonna start on that. Milking money. I guess we can get into that now. I was going to say milking money is a different subject. It's really the same subject. Give me 1 second. Being a businessman. Jake Paul gives relationship advice in his book. He seems like such an unattractive person to me. I don't know why. Well, we're talking about idiots extorting money off of young, impressionable kids, but I don't think there's a difference between kids and adults in this way. What if you go and you advertise anything? You go and you make a Coca-Cola, well, let's say huge companies that rely almost completely on advertisement for their company. Like Coca-Cola and Pepsi. Is Coca-Cola doing anyone a favor by advertising their product? Are they helping humanity at all? Now, they're providing a product. Coca-Cola is something that people like. It's so unhealthy. I mean, they're not... Like, if you get someone addicted to sugar and they buy a lot of Coca-Cola now, so you're giving them something you want... This is a really tough thing for me, morally. A very, very hard ethical thing. I didn't want to go into the forest and find a dead body. Exactly. What if you give a bunch of people drugs for free and they get addicted to it, and now you sell it to them? So you're giving them a thing they want. There's this guy, Noam Chomsky, I think his name is. Trovsky. He has this book called I think it's called Manufacturing Consent. This is a really, really hard moral dilemma, and it's weird how we don't do more as a society to patch this. Like, I guess we sort of did it with cigarettes. Like, you're not allowed to sell cigarettes unless it has a big label on it saying, at least being clear in how unhealthy this is. I could easily see that in my lifetime that happening with products with a lot of sugar, let's say, very high sugar content, or other things, or even aspartame. It's unhealthy stuff. I can't say I never drink diet. I never drink sugar cola, but I can't even remember the last time I drank sugar cola. It's been many years, I think. Diet cola and very small diet sodas, like very, very small. I don't buy it. Sometimes if it's served, I'll have 1 cup because I feel like it. Very small quantities, which in that case, it doesn't have any actual significant health problems. Coca-Cola used to have cocaine. I could totally imagine, and it would be the downfall of Coca-Cola, by the way, would be requiring Coca-Cola besides for nutrition contents, which is on there, to basically have a label that says this is a huge risk to diabetes and obesity, and it's going to mess up your digestive system, and it's going to increase your blood sugar way too high. There's so many, like the number one cause of death in the United States, I think is if we're gonna, I want to get my facts straight. Top causes of death, USA. I want to get this clear. Going through the actual things like heart disease and stuff like that, but if you're gonna talk about external causes of death in the United States, I'm pretty sure the number one was unhealthy diets, number two was tobacco, and number three was cars, or something like that. Those were the top three. If you're talking, heart disease is the way they die, but you can't really heart disease because what caused it? Old age can also cause it. So if you're talking about external things that you can actually link the death to something external, it was unhealthy diet, unhealthy food, cars, and smoking and tobacco. Heart disease would be something more internal. Uniqueness versus fitting in. Sort of. Okay, Moon's asking a question. Fry, what about people who are so unaware of themselves that they are just passively offensive without actively trying to be so? Should they change to benefit society or stay their natural self to be unique? Again, that's a matter, it really comes down to what they want. Now, if a person, it really comes down to the same equation. Do you care more about being yourself, or do you care more about the relationship? And here, it's not the relationship with a particular partner or the particular girl. We're talking about the relationship with just society as a general. And you can have people that are so uncharismatic that no one likes them. Should they try to change themselves? You know, I know people like that. I know people, they're so uncharismatic and that no one likes them. No, there's not a person in the world who likes them. It's not because they're like a loser or something like this. It's because they're obnoxious. It's because they're such a douchebag. They just don't have any sensitivity of what any other person is feeling besides themselves, and everyone hates them. Should they change? So the answer is very, very clear, is that it depends what they want. If they value being their own uncharismatic, douchey self more than having positive relationships with people, then yeah, they shouldn't change at all. It's sad, but that's the truth. If they actually value having relationships with other people, they should probably work on themselves to try to be more charismatic and more sensitive and more adaptive and more flexible and more aware of what other people are thinking. You know? The perfect stream doesn't exist. Should ban smoking. I don't really believe in banning tobacco. I think there being more education in how bad it is. I don't actually believe in making it illegal. Since the only person usually, secondhand smoke, the only person you're really hurting is yourself. Alcohol, on the other hand, I don't know. I think alcohol in reasonable quantities actually has a positive effect. It's really unreasonable drinking, excessive drinking, that has the main negative effects of drunk driving and people being, getting poisoned from alcohol, all kinds of things like that. Also just the health, health-wise, a person who drinks a small amount of alcohol, there's a lot of research that seems to lead to the fact that could be a good thing for a person. I try to drink no alcohol because I know if I drink a little bit, I'm going to drink too much. That's me personally. I have a very addictive personality. Why do politics get so heated? Well, I think the reason is because, first of all, it's subjects that people really care about, and the second thing is intolerance. I think if there was more tolerance, it wouldn't get so heated. I think if you really, really care about something, it depends what you mean by heated. If by heated you mean people are passionate, I think it's just because of what they care about. Being passionate, there's nothing wrong with that. Now, all the anger and all the hate and all that stuff, that's coming from intolerance. Is that if someone disagrees with you on something you care about, you hate them. It's the fight or flight response. Used to be more of a douchebag. And always saying what I thought. And that hurt other people. Now you're trying to be more of a simp. I like pretending that I agree with other people. You don't really do, but that's the only way of keeping a friendship, I guess. Again, that really depends on how much you value a relationship, how much you value being yourself. Now, you don't have to go all the way to being a simp. The best way is being a balance. It's not that you should completely do anything for someone, because that would be being a simp, but being a person who is, you are yourself, you're a confident self, you're clear about that, but you're still able to be flexible out of consideration for other people. You're not being a simp if you're doing that. Being considerate is not being a simp. Being considerate about anything and say that you'll do anything for another person and not thinking about yourself at all, that's being a simp. Or doing it in a very extreme manner. It doesn't have to be anything. Level of anti-tobacco indoctrination we have for I think it's a matter of education. I think the education is happening. I think the harm of processed sugar being such a prevalent part of the American diet, it's becoming so prevalent, especially when we start getting in touch with people from countries where they don't eat as much processed sugar. Just like there's so many, you end up meeting so many people from Asian countries. They're so much healthier. Their life expectancy is so much longer. There's so much less obesity there. But they also have a lot less of the unhealthy fats and sugars and the really high calorie and the snacks and just this whole part of the American culture just doesn't exist there. And it's a lot healthier. I think the more communication there is, the more we're being exposed to alternative societies where they don't have this crap. I think that is actually the best education. What grades are my kids getting? They're 2 and 4. They're not really getting grades. If you start acting like a douchebag, people will actually start to respect you. So it depends what kinds of respect. There is, again, a certain respect you have of a person just being this unfiltered, unadulterated, totally genuine version of themselves. There is a certain respect for that. But on the other hand, do you think anyone's going to want to be in a relationship with you long term if you're a douchebag? That is disrespect. That is saying, I do not value you. I don't respect you to the point where I want to be in that sort of intimacy with you. So both ways makes you gain respect, also makes you lose respect. If a person's a complete simp, then people can also gain respect for that. Oh, he's such a nice guy. But you're not going to find them sexually attractive. So you gain a certain respect. You'll gain that friend zone, possibly even friend zone respect. That's the whole thing about simps. The stereotype is they get friend zoned a lot. Girls want to be their best friend, best buddy, but they don't want to be a sexual partner with them because they don't find it sexually attractive. Fry brings the Canadian obesity rate up 125%. Thank you. So sweet. People are really skinny in North Korea. Except for Kim Jong-un. Consumerism supports an unhealthy diet. I think there is this education of drink Coca-Cola. That advertisement is education. The problem is that advertisement is very often education for things that are harming people. That's a good argument for advertisement to be regulated. And it is to some point. Like, you're not allowed to have tobacco commercials on TV anymore. You were allowed to back in the day. I mean, not even that long ago. There were cigarette commercials on regular TV. They banned those. More regulation on advertisement. As a person in advertisement who would suffer tremendously from that being implemented, I would say I'm still in favor of it. Financially, I'm saying, because the less regulations there are, the bigger the industry is, so the more money a YouTuber who's, I'm making a lot of my money based on ad revenue, I would actually still be in favor of that. Of there being more regulation on advertisement, because you're educating, meaning us as a society. What is regulation going to mean? Us as a society decide together that is it limiting freedom of speech? Oh, that's tough. I mean, we're also saying you're not allowed to teach certain things in school. I shouldn't teach people in school about white supremacy. So I don't think it's limiting freedom of speech. I think you can say, if you're on an open platform, oh, that's tough. That's actually really, really tough. I don't know. I don't have this clear. Let's talk about it, though. I would really like to talk about this. I'm curious. Would you sacrifice your kids for your wife? What? Oh. I'm very lucky I don't have to be faced with such extreme life decisions like that. Oh, man. More regulation usually means revolt. Well, again, does anyone here think tobacco ads should be allowed on television? That's tough, though. How do you balance freedom of speech with people very, very harmful advertisements? Ugh. Maybe there should be a difference if you have direct financial gain. You're still limiting freedom of speech by saying they're not allowed to advertise that. Let's say someone pays me to advertise cigarettes and say, oh, cigarettes are great. Everyone do crack. Yeah, let's say someone paid me to the big crack organization. People sell the opioids, the pill pushers. Percocet. I don't know what this is. Is Percocet an opioid? I should probably know that. Yeah. Percocet. Yeah, let's say Percocet gets in touch with me and says, you guys, you got to tell everyone to take Percocet. It's going to solve all your problems. It's a drug. It's like heroin. It's basically heroin mixed with Tylenol, yeah? That's more or less what the ingredients are in freaking Percocet. So, and I say, sure, you pay me $100 and I'm going to advertise your freaking heroin that you're pill pushing to people. So, overall, am I having a destructive harm on society? That's tough. You're limiting freedom of speech in order to... Oh. Should advertisement be included? Should advertisement have freedom of speech laws? That's really tough. I don't know what to do with that. Anyone have a good balance for that thing? Because I don't want there to be cigarette advertisements on TV either. But how is that not a violation of freedom of speech? Let's say a teacher in a school wants to teach the kids about white supremacy. Why would they not be allowed to? Teach them it's really good to be super racist. Like, you're not allowed to teach that in school. You're going to get kicked out. Freedom of speech. What do you do about that? $100 is cheap. You know what I mean. People disrupt their way of defining what's correct and incorrect. That's tough. I'm talking on a moral level right now. They should say you give you a choice. See, again, on the one hand, you can say you should be able to advertise whatever you want because you still have a choice. The problem is that that's not the way it works. People do get brainwashed from advertisements. They get convinced of buying a product that is really, really unhealthy for them. From making this illusion that this will solve your social anxiety, this will make you look cool. That's really dangerous, but I guess principles of free speech, it should be allowed. I don't know what to do with it. I'd love if someone had a really good insight, because I am very, very torn over this. Everyone should choose what to advertise in their place, so there should be no regulating, which means tobacco advertisements on children's television should be allowed. Get them hooked early, yeah? Go and geared towards children. You should be allowed to advertise whatever the heck you want. You can advertise pornography to them too, as long as they'll consume it. As long as parents aren't going to be plucking it away from their kids, you should be able to do whatever the heck you want. I don't know. In that sense, the FDA is violating free speech. Is this product, are you allowed to provoke the FDA now? It's not really speech. That's where the product itself is dangerous. It's in Ricola. My voice is dead. What about the FDA then? Is the FDA a violation of free speech? I mean, they're not limiting marketing. They're more saying you're not allowed to, like, let's say just freaking heroin. We don't allow people to have freaking street heroin in the United States, and cocaine, yeah? Cocaine's not allowed. So we're limiting people's freedom by not letting them distribute cocaine, by not letting them do crack. We're limiting people's freedom, and that's a good thing overall. Remove the is. Fry's looking for his Percocets. I'm looking for Ricola. I need something for my throat. My throat is so dry. I'm gonna go search for it one more time. Be right back. Need my cough drops so badly. What did I get? Heck of a cough drops. They might be upstairs. I'll just grab a couple more halls. Screw it. Sugar. Halls will do. Will do. Cola, yeah. Sponsored by Halls, guys. I think this has sugar in it, so I don't want to eat it. That's all I have. Every law is limiting speech. I don't think it is, though. You're preventing harmful products from being distributed, but not speech. Should we make laws banning high calorie? I mean, maybe that we should, though. Maybe instead of banning advertising Coca-Cola, we should just ban Coca-Cola. Would America be a better place if we got rid of Coca-Cola? Of course it would be. Sorry, Coke. Sorry. I'm not advertising your freaking poison. Let's just get rid of it. There's no need for it. Man, imagine the outrage if some politician proposed banning Coca-Cola. People would go nuts. You know why? Because they're addicted to sugar. It's really sad. It's really sad if you think about how many people would be so upset if you did that. I know it tastes good, but it's not. You don't need it. There's so many good things that taste good. Our whole bar. I don't know. I'm saying maybe, well, let's say a person values something tasting good more than it being healthy. I guess that's okay. That's fine. We all do that to some level. It tastes like garbage. McDonald's, same thing. I don't know. See, McDonald's, I agree with you. But the fact that there is very inexpensive, high-calorie, the thing is very, very high-calorie food, but very inexpensive, high-calorie, prepared, warm food, it would be very, very hard to limit that, because there's a lot of people actually, let's say you have people who are homeless, like, the fact that no one is dying of starvation, because you can get a nice warm meal. One of these burgers has enough calories, you can live the entire day on one of these burgers, you can be fine, you know what I mean? This thing says like 2,000 calories, I don't know what it is. In fact, you can go and buy one, you can spend $3 to have enough calories for the entire day is like amazing. Like they should have McDonald's in freaking India or I don't know, places full of starving kids just to feed these people. Like that would be amazing if they had that. I understand that. It's a lot of, I don't know, maybe a little more regulate. Like there is some proposing limiting like saturated like trans fat, not being able to use trans fat in restaurants and in food, basically banning trans fat, which I feel like there was a lot of libertarians who were very, very against them. Republicans, they were, no, it's freedom, you can't limit people's freedom, but I personally am not against that. Because, like, why is that different than... Why is that different than banning cocaine? Like, what's going to end up killing more people, trans fat or cocaine? It's similar. I don't know which one would actually end up being more dangerous, but I presume it would be a similar scale. A huge McDonald's cheeseburger does not fill the stomach. It's like you feel like you can't eat anything for a week after eating that crap. No, I don't agree. I don't... Dude, Moomoon, I did not agree with your premise that everything is included in freedom of speech. I think there's a very difference between having an opinion, expressing that opinion, and doing something. And creating a dangerous product is doing something. But if that's the truth, then we should have a lot more legislation banning a lot of unhealthy foods that Americans are eating. It should not exist. Because people still buy heroin even if it's prohibited. But again, there would be a lot more heroin addicts if it was legal than if it's not. Now, it happens to be they found ways of legalizing it, like Percocet, all these things, and you end up with a lot of junkies. Like, there's this new thing nowadays, apparently, that you have these junkie soccer moms. They're freaking complete heroin addicts, and they're bringing their kids in their minivan to soccer practice, because of all these opioids that have now been legalized and are being prescribed by doctors. Freedom of expression is not protected by the Constitution. Well, that's what freedom of speech is. Isn't that the First Amendment? It's freedom of verbal expression, not physical expression. I mean, if I'm mad at you, I can punch you in the face, but verbal expression, that is. You can't apply freedom of speech to advertisement because it's not an expression of speech. It's simply an ad for a company, not an expression of an opinion. Well, no, it is. It's just words, though. I think that's where you draw the line: is that words are allowed, actions are not allowed.
Top 10
You can't
madness.
do whatever you want, but you can say whatever you want as long as it's not a direct call to violence. What if something is a direct call to an unhealthy behavior? Oh, that's rough. Because once you set that precedent, then you're going to ban free speech. Everyone's going to say, well, you know, if you say that you should build a wall between the United States and Mexico, you're basically saying something which is a very unhealthy thing to do. It's very hateful. It's very that you're going to set a direct call to violence. I feel like is a great place to draw the line and say that's not allowed. To say that you're advocating subjectively, it's completely subjective that these things are unhealthy. You can't objectively prove that Coca-Cola is unhealthy. Small amounts is completely healthy. You can drink a small amount of Coca-Cola. The problem is if you drink tons and tons and tons of it, that's when it becomes unhealthy. Thank you so much, VZ Solaire. 3 months Amazon Prime. Really appreciate it. What food counts as good for you? Now, I'm curious. Again, it's obviously on a big spectrum. You know, cleaner foods that are less refined and more, you know, even like carbohydrates are much more like oats and brown rice and things like this that are you know, are less calorie dense. But again, very dense calorie food is good for some people. If you have a person who's undernourished, calorie dense, that's the reason it tastes so good. It's because most of history we did not have enough food. That's why the foods that taste the best are the ones with the most fat and the most sugar and have the most calories per square inch because we're much more nuts. Things with, things you find with sugary things, fruits, things with naturally have very, very high calories. That's the reason why it tastes so good. We've adapted that way to be much more attracted to calorie-dense food. So if you're starving, calorie-dense food is great if you're starving. Fry just steamrolled that sub? What? Steamrolled? The heck? Did I miss someone? Salt and sugar, exactly. Salt, you really need a certain amount of salt to survive. It really, really helps. I mean, you need the electrolytes that you have in salt, or so. That's why we like salty food. Now, if you eat too much salt, that's a problem. The same thing with calorie density. If you eat so large quantities of very, very calorie dense food, it turns out to be very unhealthy. Categories of speech that are given lesser or no protection by the First Amendment, therefore may be restricted, include obscenity, fraud, child pornography, speech integral to illegal conduct, speech that incites imminent lawless action, imminent, speech that violates intellectual property law, true threats, commercial speech, such as advertisement? Really? Why though? Again, I can question that ruling of the Supreme Court. Apparently, we really do limit advertisement, like we say that the cigarette commercials are illegal. I'm just trying to think of the moral justification for that. Because let's say we decide that. Let's say all the Democrats decide that. Let's say the Democrats have three majority. They have. Let's say just for example, it doesn't matter which one. Let's say one political party has the Senate, Congress, and the executive branch. They just landslide one election. And they decide together, make legislation that anything that is advertised, any advertisements of the opposite political party is considered to be dangerous. And we're going to make legislation that's illegal to advertise any political party that's different than our own. How come they won't be able to do that? It's fascism. You have immediate, bam, fascism. If you start making advertisement illegal, and even people are able to say it in their own little communities and their own little things, you're just going to have massive brainwashing and Nazi propaganda that's going to try to really and will eventually succeed in making the entire population have one political view. That's the problem of setting the precedent, that you're able to determine something's dangerous, which that part's fine, but then limit people's advertisement, basically disseminating free speech about their view of something you consider to be dangerous. That's a very, very dangerous precedent to set. You just talked right through his thing? Oh, I thought I was going to skip. Oh, okay. I didn't hear it. Can you guys hear the subs? I don't have them here. I should put it on, though. Here, I should put the Streamlabs on. Could you guys hear the sub? The Twitch alerts? Commercial ads? What about political ads, though? What I'm saying is, if you can limit a commercial ad, why can't you limit a political ad? Political ads now are sanctioned because they're political. You can make everything political into non-political and vice versa. If there's big-time politics about... There's so many things that are fuzzy in that area. If we're going to ban trans fats, now are you allowed to advertise things with... Let's say there's a big political debate. All the Republicans say tobacco should be legal, and Democrats say tobacco should be illegal, or vice versa. It doesn't matter which one thinks which. So is making an advertisement for pro-tobacco, is that political now? Now it's sanctioned? There's no clear line between politics and products. The FDA approves of them. FDA approving something just means that taking small quantities of it over a short period of time is not going to kill you. The FDA, it's very limited. Political ads are exempt, but I'm saying you can make anything from politics, not politics, very easily. To make the argument anything is political, then, so now you've sanctioned everything. Let's say there's a certain political candidate that their whole agenda is we have to make smoking as legal as possible. And they go, and instead of just advertising their own themselves as a candidate, they advertise smoking now. So now is it political? Now you're allowed to put smoking advertisements on TV? That's tough. What is the exact difference between what we're going to limit in advertisement and what we're not? It's crazy how they brainwash people in politics everywhere. Forget about North Korea. You think people in America are brainwashed politically? It's not as much as North Korea, for sure. Because it's the government controls all the media. Radiation. What does this have to do with simping? The reason we got from here is first we talk about relationships. So we talked about at the beginning of the podcast. It's actually 11:51. I should be wrapping it up now. We got from there to being, how much should you do that in society? How much should you care about what other people, being yourself in society, or trying to meld yourself into the way where everyone else thinks. I think we got from there then into business, because really to be a good businessman, you have to be politically completely neutral, and you also have to be a total simp to be a good businessman sometimes. Because you have to, if you're trying to just please as many people as possible, make your product and your company seem as pleasurable as possible, you have to totally simp out and be as flexible as you can about controversial subjects to be able to please the maximum number of people. I think we got from there into mass advertising. I think there was probably a step I missed there, how we got to the mass advertising. Still don't remember. But anyway, we're in the just talking portion of the podcast, so we're getting into it. Let me see what the YouTube chat's talking about right now. Breaking news, man who plays online card game for a living explains how people work. Yeah. This is it. So political ads that have to do with products, that's tough. It's a really tough thing to separate. I hear what you're saying, though. I guess that's fine. So I guess then you can limit products, but not limit politics. I guess that sort of legislation does make sense. That you have to leave it up to judges. Ugh. It's so fragile, though. Because I don't know. What flavor of Halls? I think it's cherry. It's probably cherry. I wouldn't have bought a flavor of sucking candy that's not cherry. Why would I ever do that? So I can safely assume it's cherry. Think religions are unnecessary in 21st century? Well, we can do a whole talk about religion sometime. I think I'm going to wrap it up there. Alright, guys. I'll see you later. I'm going to try to take some of these rants, cut them up, and put them up on YouTube. I'll announce that in the normal channels, in the Fry 'em Up and the Fry 'em Up. I'll probably do it on a separate YouTube channel, so I'll make a post about it. And maybe plug it in some of the highlight videos. When I feel ready to do that. I'll probably work on that tomorrow. This was a good talk, though. I was really agonizing over this sort of thing. I feel like I really am dealing with this in relationships right now. It's very hard to date right now. This is a big problem. Say, oh, be patient, and very, very hard to be patient nowadays because of coronavirus. It makes dating really, really difficult. So who knows? Maybe the coronavirus thing is what made the simp thing happen. Because people are more desperate. That is a really cool observation. I think we'll leave it at that. Alright, guys. I will see you tomorrow. More PVZ, and tomorrow night we're going to be playing some new games. I'm checking out some new mobile games. Could we will try a game called Among Us, which would be a very fun social game to play together with the Discord. Yeah. Alright, guys. I'll see you tomorrow. I gotta go. I don't have a voice left. See ya!